You've probably figured out by now that I quite like reading books on conversations. I want to teach you a skill that comes from this book called Crucial Conversations. It's called the contrasting skill, and it's really helpful in terms of clarifying your intentions, avoiding any potential misunderstandings, and putting your comments into perspective so that others don't see them as bigger than they really are. Put simply, the contrasting skill involves using something called a don't do statement, where you share what you aren't saying or what you don't mean, and then what you are saying or what you do mean. Step 1 is to begin with the don't statement, and you do that by explaining what you don't want them to think or believe, or what you're not trying to say, what this isn't about. So you might say something like, I don't want to suggest that, or this is not about. The last thing I want is for you to, I'm not trying to say that. You can start that statement any way you like, but the key point is to be really clear about what you don't intend. Step 2 is to follow up with your do statement. And this is where you explain what you do intend or what you do mean. This is the part where you're clarifying your true purpose and motives. To share some examples, you might say something like, what I do want is for us to, the topic I do want to discuss is, this is about. Okay, have you got that so far? So you're comparing two different things, what you do want and what you don't want, what you are saying and what you're not saying. It's a bit like apples and oranges. Come to think of it, why do people compare apples and oranges anyway? I mean, they're different, but they're not exactly opposite, right? Surely we can use a pair instead. So let's take a look at a couple of different examples. Example number 1. I'm not saying that I'm unhappy with your overall performance, not at all. What I do want to speak about is the quality of your work on the marketing project. So there you can see the don't do statement, but in the form of what the person is and isn't talking about. Example number 2. I don't want to suggest that the meeting didn't go well. In fact, I think we all got a lot out of it. I did want to share some observations on your communication style, as I can see opportunities for you to be even more effective next time. Hopefully you can see through that example that this skill can also be really helpful in putting your comments into perspective. So you're saying, I'm not talking about this big thing, I'm just talking about this little tiny piece of feedback that I'd like to offer you. You'll also find a resource on this skill, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that and try this out in a whole range of different situations. Finally, I'd like to share 3 tips on using this approach. Tip number 1 is to tailor your don't statement based on what you think the other person might be thinking or feeling. So if you feel concerned that they might misinterpret what you're saying, tailor your don't statement around that. Put that concern to rest. Tip number 2 is no buts. Avoid using the word but or however between your statements. Just use a short pause instead. The reason for that is because so often when we use the word but or however, the person thinks that whatever we just said isn't true at all, and it's only the next bit that really counts. My final tip is that both statements have to be really genuine. So I would encourage you to give some thought to what you are saying and what you're not saying, what you do want and what you don't want, not only in terms of the conversation, but also the broader issue and the relationship with the other person. And that's where your authentic do and don't statements will really come from. So there you have it, the contrasting skill. Sounds pretty simple, but it's actually really helpful when you learn how to master it. So what do you think? Do I need to actually get an orange next time? Come on, be honest with me.